Pak Siswo, thank you so much for your time tonight. Pak, with regards to the summit, ASEAN Australian Special Summit 2024, how this summit will benefit Indonesia?
Yeah, so actually, not only about the summit. The visit of President Joko Widodo to Melbourne is for two important meetings. Number one is, of course, to attend the special summit, commemorative summit, 50 years of the cooperation between ASEAN and Australia. And number two, the President also attend several bilateral high-level meetings with the Prime Minister of Cambodia, with Prime Minister of New Zealand, and of course with Prime Minister of Australia. Now, the summit is important because you are going to have two products of the summit. The number one is more visionary in nature, the vision statement about what is the future between ASEAN and Australian cooperation. Yeah. And number two is the so-called Melbourne Declaration, and this is something more tangible, like how to improve cooperation on the politics, economics realm in the region, socio-cultural aspect, yeah? And in a way, what we want to have is like stable region. Yeah? We understand the geoeconomic dynamics with certainty in the future and the long term, but actually benefit for welfare of all parties of ASEAN and Australia in the region. So this is important to us.
Important for Indonesia and also ASEAN as a whole. What was the initial agenda of Australia to actually build this relationship between Australia and Southeast Asia countries?
Yes, since the inception of the Australia new strategy on Southeast Asia, Australia is aware that Australian security depends on the situation in Southeast Asia. If we have the stable Southeast Asia, then Australia will be secure, yeah, politically. But actually important if we have welfare, progress, economic progress in Southeast Asia, Australia will also benefit from it. So I think this is the message that both Australia and ASEAN is working together on it.
I spoke to Ibu Retno Marsudi yesterday. She underlined it is important to have two ways cooperation between especially Indonesia and Australia. In terms of bilateral agreement, is there any agreement that will benefit Indonesia?
Yeah, and in the recent year, we see that so much opportunity has been opened up, yeah, between Indonesia and Australia. Actually, last year and hopefully this year too is the best harvesting time for Indonesia and Australia. So, for instance, we are aware for long times that Indonesian economics and Australian economic is not only convergence, but they are also pretty much complementary. Just remember the things, yeah. In the last 8 years, Indonesia has surplus in our trade with the world. Yeah, so we have surplus in our trade with the world, and our surplus is actually sometimes very big, like 50 billion US dollars, sometimes 30 billion, but we have surplus. Now we have surplus because of we are manufacturing powers now in the region. Indonesia is manufacturing powers with the region, together with other countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and others. Yeah. So we produce a lot of metal products, stainless products, yeah. And most of the material, like iron ore, come from Australia. So the raw material comes from Australia, and then we process it in Indonesia, and boom, we sell it to the global market. Now, this is a very important. Yeah. Now we are is manufacturing power of the region. We are part of the global value chain. Yeah. And at the same time, we is the largest market, not only in the region but also beyond, with a very young population. Now, this is important. Why? To become a manufacturing powers, you not only need a raw material, that we get it from Australia, but we need also very well-trained manpower. So that's why between Indonesia and Australia, we agreed upon how to do more cooperation on the human resources development. To follow this, that means we invite Australia to invest more in our education. And this is not a dream, now it's a reality. In the last 2 years, you have Monash University Open Campus in Jakarta, we have Western Sydney University Open Campus in Surabaya, and Daikin is in the process of opening their campus in Bandung. On the pipeline is also in the process now is Central Queensland is going to open their campus in Balikpapan with the extension campus in the new capital of Nusantara. So the purpose is to create very good competitive labors in Indonesia, and then we can support our industrialization. Yeah. So number 2 is on the transfer of technology, because factor of production, you need a good laborers, means the investment on education. You need technology. Yeah. So there's a lot of cooperation on the research and development among campuses in Indonesia, among industries. Yeah. And don't forget, combining the two, now we have the mutual recognition agreement. Last year, we just signed it on engineer. That means now our engineer is recognized, have the same standard with Australia. That means our engineer can work in Australia, and of course Australia engineer can work in Indonesia. The nature of our relation between Indonesia and Australia, we call it intra-industrial trade. Yeah. So that means we take their raw material, we send the finished product to Australia, but at the same time we also take some finished product from Australia for our industry. So that's why the relation is so important. In the nutshell, we call it Indonesia-Australia economic powerhouse. This is the most important part in our relation now.
This is a different one from EASEPA. It's something else.
This is the implementation of EASEPA. EASEPA has been around for 5 years so far, and we are almost complete the plan of action of it. Now our job is to formulate the next or the continuation of the plan of action for 2025-2029. So what I'm saying is actually about the implementation of EASEPA into dollar and cents. Yeah.
Okay. Since you mentioned about human capital, I just want to ask this question before we move to the next question. In terms of investment in education, what is the actual implementation on that? Because as we know, Australian universities are expensive, especially for Indonesian market. Will there be any incentive for young Indonesians who want to study at Australian universities in Indonesia?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. Number one, on the Australian investment in education has been there for a long time. Yeah. As you know, we have 250,000 Australian alumni in Indonesia. So high-ranking officer, we can mention Pak Pratikno, is also graduate from Adelaide, and Pak Erlangga, for instance, is from Monash University. I myself graduate both from Monash and TNU. So we have 250,000 people like that. So that's a big number. Yeah. Now, in the past, we sent students to study in Australia. Until today, Australia is still the very important main destination for young Indonesians to study abroad. Yeah. UK is number 2, but now UK in the very tough competition with the regional university like Korea, Japan, and China. Yeah. But Australia remains the main destination. But what we expect now, if we would like to have to build trust among the two countries, should be in two-way traffic. We send our young people to study in Australia. It is now the time for Australia to send young Australians to study in Indonesia. They can study in Indonesian campuses or Australian campuses beyond what we know as the New Colombo Plan. Yeah. Because study abroad, for instance, if Indonesian young people study in Australia, they are not only gaining knowledge but also building networking. Equally important is the time for the Australian young people to study in Indonesia and build networking, because the economic powerhouse cannot be realized without the strong networking between the two. Yeah? So this is not another important reason. Last but not least is that the number of middle class in Indonesia is growing. For those who already in the middle class, they have enough income to send their student to their kids to study abroad. But those who are in the process of becoming one, now they need a cheaper alternative with a still very high standard, so they can study in the Australian campuses in Indonesia, either at Monash or in the Deakin University or in the Western Sydney University in Surabaya.
Australia has a large number of scholarships for foreign students coming to Australia. You think Australia will prioritize Indonesian students to study in Australia?
Yeah, pretty much. One of the results of the ASEAN-Australia summit is Australia is going to provide about 100 new scholarship for the ASEAN students to study what? To study what ASEAN has been developing so far, the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. There are many clusters of study within the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. It can be connectivity, it can be business, it can be UN SDGs, for instance. Now, in Surabaya, now Western Sydney University is a good champion on UN SDGs. That's why they offer the subject of UN SDGs and their campus in Surabaya, and this precisely match one of the cluster of the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. So this is one of the concrete results in the summit, ASEAN-Australian summit that we just completed today.
My last question, Pak Siswo, did we have any agreements in terms of investment in Indonesia? Because I know that on the final announcement by Albanese this afternoon, he mentioned to build the technological hubs in Ho Chi Minh City and Jakarta. And also, as you mentioned earlier, there's a new investment in terms of nickel investment in Sulawesi. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I think the technological hub will be very, very helpful for all the startup. Yeah, I remember, for instance, last year when we or 2 years ago when we host the G20, and of course within G20 we have B20, Business 20, and also when we chair the ASEAN summit last year in Jakarta, there are priority on the digital transformation, and the most important thing for digital transformation is the inclusive economy, because we are talking about small and medium enterprises, and the number of small and medium enterprises in ASEAN alone is very big, 72 million small and medium enterprises. Out of the 72 million, about 60 million is in Indonesia. So you can imagine how important to connect all of them into e-commerce. Yeah. So startup, so for instance, as you might already aware, Bukalapak, they have the technological hub in Melbourne, and now they open one in Sydney. And Privy, they start the office in Sydney already. So this is a very good example how we develop very fast in terms of digital transformation. To open one in Jakarta or in Ho Chi Minh City or perhaps other big city in ASEAN, it actually will facilitate the digital economy and e-commerce between Indonesia and Australia. Just remember one thing, we are more or less in the same time zone. If we are talking some Australian business which have office, for instance, office in Sydney, in let's say in Perth, when they would like to connect their counterpart in London, you have 7 hours different. But if they ring their counterpart in Bali, There's no time zone difference. It's okay, 7 o'clock here is 7 o'clock in Bali. Digital transformation, e-commerce will give the opportunity because we are in the same time zone. So we start and finish at the same time. This is good for the real-time business. Now, all the startup is actually part of the inclusive economy. That's very important. Now, number two, on your question on the level of investment, Australian investment in Indonesia, in the last couple of years, actually, in total Australian investment in Indonesia increased by 170%. It's a quite big jump, actually. Now, I mentioned before about the iron business in Indonesia because we are manufacturing powers and we produce finished product or semi-finished product, metals and so on. Now, Australia is among the largest investors in Morowali. Yeah. So, for instance, nickel industries, they already invested a lot in Morowali. Yeah. I met with the president directors, they call it, of nickel industry, Justin Wafers in Sydney. So nickel industry already invested $3 billion in their business in nickel in Indonesia, in Sulawesi. Now they plan to have an expansion of the production to produce the high-grade 3 class of nickel for electric vehicle and battery, and they are ready to invest $1.7 billion in Sulawesi. So this is a good news. This is an example why we need to have more cooperation with Australia, their technology, our natural resources, our human resources, and we produce high quality products. Because in Australian investment in Indonesia is highly guided, yeah, by the environment, social and governance. Good environment, social and governance. This is a guarantee for sustainable economic development and sustainable industry. So we need to have more trust between Australia and Indonesia. They have lithium, you produce your lithium, we have nickel, we produce our nickel, and we need to have more cooperation, your nickel, our nickel, your lithium, and we can produce electric vehicle and battery. I think this is the challenge on how to implement the MOU between Australian government and Indonesian government that has been signed last year on the creation of the good environment for joint production for electric vehicle between Australia and Indonesia. And don't forget, the ASEAN leaders already committed to create a good environment, ASEAN as a whole, as a market and also industrial side for electric vehicle as well. And you need lithium. Australia have one. And you need nickel. Indonesia is the largest producer of nickel in the world. So combined together, we can share the benefit of our expertise, our resources, and also human resources.
So sustainability is the highlight for this.
Yeah, so don't worry about that because there are many mining companies from Indonesia also doing business in Australia, invest in Australia. We have Salim Group, we have Sinarmas, we have Adaro, we have Puma, all operated in Australia or operate here in Australia market, and they abide by the very tough Australia environmental regulation. And yet, not only they survive in this Australian business environment, but they also make profit. That means it's a good benchmarking. If you can profit from in Australian mining with very tough regulation on environment, on laborers, that means you up to in the very high standard. Then you can mine to the rest of the world as well.